Another series that is wrapped up in kind of the way or kind of the expectation that we all had. My Atlanta Braves dropped game 2 to the Padres 5-4. Braves are eliminated in their first round matchup in the third consecutive season. They lost the NLDS in 22 and 23 to the Phillies, and now lost to the Padres in 2024 in the wild card round. Before we get to San Diego, for Atlanta, it feels like this loss is both similar to the last two and completely different, because the last two, they were division winners. They came in hot, and pitching issues cropped up in the postseason. You had Spencer Strider coming off an illness 2 years ago. Max Fried had been hurt. Their starts didn't go well. Last year, you had Strider got shelled a little bit. Max Fried coming off a finger blister. Charlie Morton unavailable. They have to start Bryce Elder in game 3. They get blasted. This year, Chris Sale unavailable with a back. They start AJ Smith-Shawver in game 1. He gets blasted. And then Max Fried takes a comebacker off the hip. I think it was like 105 miles an hour by Fernando Tatis Jr. And it starts giving him issues in the second inning. He gives up 5 runs on 6 consecutive hits, gets pulled after just 2 innings. Atlanta fights valiantly, but just can't seem to come back. Is this, because of all the injuries Atlanta had this year, is this loss different from the previous years, or is this just another disappointing postseason finish for Atlanta?
Oh, no, I don't think it's disappointing at all. I think the fact that they made it is impressive in itself. And I said that kind of about the Houston Astros at the beginning of this episode, but it's even more impressive with the Atlanta Braves. I mean, they lost their top pitcher in Spencer Strider. They lost Ronald Acuna Jr., the former reigning National League MVP, who had a 40-70 season last year. You don't get that production. You've had injuries to Sean Murphy. You've had injuries to Michael Harris. I could go on and on. Austin Riley didn't make the postseason roster because he's hurt, and you still found a way to make it there. The bottom of that batting order, Lindsay, is nowhere close to where it was in 2021 when they won the World Series. Ozzie Albies was batting second in this game. I'm pretty sure he batted 8th in the 2021 World Series, right in front of Dansby Swanson. The bottom of your lineup was Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson, I think your catcher, Denard or McCann or whoever it was. I mean, that's a lot different than what it was than we saw yesterday's in lineup, right? So I don't think this was a letdown. Obviously, it's a huge disappointment to fans, and Braves fans, because this team did have the potential to do so. What Chris Sale did this year on the mound, obviously going to win the National League Cy Young. It's
despite what Phillies fans keep arguing.
Right. Yeah. Zach Wheeler has a great season. Don't get me wrong, but Chris Sale's numbers are better, and Chris Sale deserves the Cy Young, even though he didn't make his final start. I'll die on that hill. But I do think that you got to hang your hat somewhere with these Braves. And to me, it's just making the postseason was good enough. This team will be very good next season, even if Max Fried walks, when Ronald Acuna comes back, when Spencer Strider comes back. Alex Anthopoulos is going to make some kind of big deal. It's going to be a huge offseason for Atlanta. So I'm not too upset or too worried about them, I guess I should say. But I would have liked to see them make some sort of run, because it was a pretty magical story finding them a way to get into the postseason.
Yeah. OptaStats. This is a Stats Perform. The company, the statistical company Stats Perform. This was their Twitter account, OptaStats. They put out a thing on Monday that said no other MLB team has made the playoffs in a year where 3 of their opening day starters missed the final 35-plus regular season games on the injured list. And referring to Spencer Strider, Ronald Acuna Jr., and Austin Riley. And that, I think, in and of itself is a big loss, but that even understates the losses Atlanta had, because I keep throwing this out there all year. Atlanta's opening day lineup got a grand total of 7 innings together. Sean Murphy got hurt in the 7th inning of the first game of the year, and that group of players never got all completely back together on the field at the same time the entire season. So to even make the postseason was great. A lot of questions for them. If you're watching this and you want to hear more about that Braves Today podcast, we're going to go into detail on that.
One question that they don't have to answer, though, is Michael Harris. Michael Harris, it was incredible in the month of September. He was incredible in the postseason run. He was obviously their MVP for the the wild card round, even though they didn't really make much moves. But him trying to come back last night with that home run in the 8th inning, I believe it was incredible. And off Adam too, because that Padres bullpen, and I know we're switching over to them. I think this is a good segue. That Padres bullpen is nasty, Lindsay, and we're set up for. Are we set up for the best divisional series that we could have asked for, Dodgers versus Padres? Because I think that's the greatest rivalry in baseball right now, personally.
I think we're getting there. So close the book on Harris. 3 for 4 last night, 2 runs, 2 RBI, triple short of the cycle. Also made a good catch in center field. Just kind of what he continues to do. A guy that had been a 2020 guy his first 2 years, batting close to 300, dealt with a lot of injury this year, missed multiple months with a hamstring issue. But you could see how getting him back could be huge, and having him hot could be big for this team next year. But yeah, moving on to the Padres, we saw kind of a familiar pitching plan here. They go with Jason Adam, they go with Robert Suarez at the end. So Adams got 2 holds. Suarez has 2 2 finished games. Got the save last night and a scoreless 9th inning. One bit of concern though: Joe Musgrove leaves this start after 3 2/3 innings. He was cruising, had allowed 1 hit and 1 run, no walks, 4 strikeouts. But catcher Kyle Higashioka, who hit home runs in 2 straight games in the series, noticed something weird in his windup, took a mound visit, got the trainers to come out. They removed him. San Diego said later it was out of elbow soreness. He's scheduled for an MRI and imaging to figure out what that might have been. How concerned are you about the Padres if they don't have Joe Musgrove available to make a late series start against the Los Angeles Dodgers in this upcoming weekend series?
Yeah, it sucks not having Joe Musgrove, but I will say it's very nice to have you Darvish just sitting in your bullpen waiting to go. So they'll still be able to have 3 solid starters, with Cease, with Darvish, and with Michael King. But losing Joe Musgrove hurts. There's no doubt about it. They asked him during the celebration last night how he felt, and he said, quote, "I'm frustrated, don't know what the future looks like for me right now." So the UCL test came back clean, but as you mentioned, he's getting an MRI tomorrow. He was on the injured list for like the same exact kind of injury. We don't know if it's exactly the same, but he had a bone spur in that same elbow earlier this year. He did say it feels, quote, very different than that bone spur. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, we don't know.
We'll find out on that one. But regardless, not a good thing to have Joe Musgrove out. I'm assuming no matter what the case is from the MRI, we will not see him on the NLDS roster.
Which is all obviously tough, losing a quality starter like that. And you do feel like you've got good pitchers. You saw what Michael King did. You've got Dylan Cease, who's now available to start game 1. The Padres were the one team that really were conservative with their pitching plan here and held out their staff ace and Dylan Cease as a potential game 3 starter if they needed him. You saw everybody else. You saw the Orioles go with Corbin Burns in game 1. You saw the Royals go with Reagans. The Tigers go with Skubal. Everybody else was aggressive with, we want our best pitcher in game 1. The Padres said, we think we can win the series without Dylan Cease throwing, and they did. And so you have to like how their pitching lines up versus LA's pitching, all of the injuries the Dodgers have had. You're looking at, there was a nice long article from MLB.com and StatCast guru Mike Petrello talking about how the Dodgers pitching can get through October. And it was, your starters are Yamamoto, Flaherty, and Walker Buehler. Yamamoto came off, he missed a couple months. He hasn't made a start on less than 5 days rest. He's only thrown 16 innings since he came back. Flaherty had a 2.61 ERA in his first 7 starts. He's had a 6.43 in his final 3 starts. And Walker Buehler, he held the Padres to 1 run in 5 innings on September 26th. He also only got 1 strikeout. And so a lot of questions here. I do agree, jumping ahead a second here, this is probably the most anticipated matchup of the next round, simply because you can see the potential for an upset in this. The Dodgers finishes the 1 seed or the 2 seed. The Dodgers are up there in the seeding. The Dodgers were the number 1 seed. And
Yeah.
it's you can easily see a path for the 4 seed to come in and knock them off in this series. That'll start at 8:38 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. That's game 1. That'll be broadcast on Fox Sports 1.